Hi, in this video I'm going to go over the Falkbeer Counter Gambit against the Kings Gambit. Now if like me you hated playing against the Kings Gambit because it was so overwhelming and just so bad, like me, you lose a lot of games in the Kings Gambit, then I think this video will be very beneficial to you because unlike white catching us off guard, now we'll be catching white off guard. It starts with e4, e5, f4, d5. Now we'll start with the fun stuff. If f takes on e5, we'll play queen to h4 check. After white blocks, we'll pick up the pawn on e4 with check, and after white blocks, pick up the rook and shortly after win the game. If instead white decides to take on d5, we'll take on f4, and if white decides to defend this very lonely pawn, developing a bishop at the same time, hoping to play the King's Gambit sort of stuff, lining up for this in the near future. We will again just play queen to h4 check, laugh in his face after he blocks with g3, and we'll just take on g3 with the f pawn. Now we are hitting this very lonely bishop on c4. If white decides to take on g3, we will win the rook shortly after again the game. If instead white decides to defend this very lonely weak bishop on c4, we will just play the simple g2 with a discovered check, and after white moves out of the way, either here or here, wherever he decides to go, let's just say king t2, we'll pick up the rook with the queen, and white here would probably resign. I think if I was white I would resign here. So there's the fun stuff. There's the quick wins, quick massive advantage. And if white decides to play the proper knight to f3 here, we'll pick up the f4 pawn again after white takes on d5. I would not recommend straight away picking up this lonely pawn on d5 because white here can develop the knight with a tempo on the queen, and after we move out of the way, white's got a lot more development than us. He's going to have a better game. So instead of picking up the lonely d5 pawn, we will add a attacker to the lonely d5 pawn with knight to f6, and we will still be clinging on to a slight advantage, being as though white has played proper up to this point. After here, if white should play bishop to c4, defending this weak d5 pawn, we will now take with the knight, and after white retakes, we'll pick up the bishop on d5. And the difference is, after knight to c3, we can play a couple of moves, and these moves, well, one of these moves leads to hundreds of different positions you can play as black. It's not possible for me to go over them, but with plenty of time on your clock, let's say you're playing a classical game and you want to play sharp, you want to have tactics up your sleeve, you can play the queen to f5. Now, as a beginner, I don't recommend this. Don't do it. You're gonna. This queen is a target. White here is going to play the queen to e2 with check. Your best move is black. To keep an advantage would be to play king to d8. You lose your castling rights. You've got a weak king. Easier development, yes. You've got some potential traps to set up in the near future, such as bishop here, if white allows you. I doubt it. If even as a beginner, I doubt white would let you do this. It's so natural for white to just castle in the next couple of moves. So again, I haven't got time. It's not physically possible to add all the variations with queen to f5 in a video. It's just not happening. So here I recommend, especially for beginners, if you don't want to have a weak king, just play the simple queen back to d8. Now again, we have a open position, so these two knights cover the b5, d5, e5 and g5 squares, and a e4, d4 squares in the center. We, however, we haven't even developed the bishops. We're already covering a lot of squares. Sorry, we'll correct that arrow. Can't draw arrows today. We're threatening pins. We're threatening tactics later on. We've got the bishop pair. A general rule of thumb: open position, no pawns blocking the centre. Bishop pair all the way. If in the centre the pawns are blocked up, the centre's blocked up, pair of knights all the way. So as a human, I'm going to want to play as black in this position. So if white decides to play properly, after knight to f3, e takes on f4, white can play here, e takes on d5, and after knight to f3, white should play the c4, pawn defending a pawn, not wasting a piece, not making this bishop act as a pawn, should I say. Black here wants to be ripping this open because white has got control of important squares in our house, so we'll want to stop this. Best move for here for white, I might add. So if you want to play the King's Gambit, you've got a general idea of what black wants to do, and the best response should play d4. Now black here can play bishop with a check, getting ready to castle, but I recommend just picking this d5 pawn up, asking white to take, but white here again should just play c5. And from here, black again has a very slight advantage. You can do anything here as black. You've got a more solid position than if you was to go into the King's Gambit, taking an f4 before anything else. There's plenty of traps. So basically, this counter gambit is all about surprising your opponent. He's come to surprise you. You're now surprising him with the Falkbeer Counter Gambit. Obviously, white here has to play accurately throughout the game, especially in the beginning, because of the ample amount of traps black has in his arsenal. So I'll end it here. I just want to say thank you again for any support or feedback you might have this early on. All likes, potential subscribers, and even feedback, just to comment on one of the videos, is more than appreciated. I'll take on the feedback. I need it. I need all the feedback. I need to know what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong, and build on from there. And that's why it's so important, and why all your feedback is massively appreciated. So thank you again. Hopefully this has been educational, instructive. You can take it on into your own games and have as much fun as I have been having. Thank you. I'll see you in the next one.